Hello students, welcome back to Mr. Sandwich Reads. I am, of course, Mr. Sandwich, and today I wanted to read Boys of Steel, the creators of Superman. This is a book I got from a library book sale. It is written by Marc Nobleman, illustrated by MacDonald, and I'm just such a big fan of comic books and superheroes. You might see my X-Men comic cover up there. Of course, Superman being DC, I do fully recognize the difference between Marvel and DC. But nevertheless, one of the greatest, most iconic superheroes. It says on the back here, I love this, before Metropolis, Smallville, and Krypton, Superman came from Cleveland. So let's find out a little bit more about that and jump on in here. Here you see the Man of Steel. Do you have a favorite Superman? You have to let me know. MrSandwichReads@gmail.com. All right. Most days, Jerry Siegel slipped into the halls of his high school staring at the floor. He always wished he were going in the other direction, back home. That's where he could be with his friends. They were an extraordinary bunch. One saved lives in the jungle. One saved lives in space. One saved lives in the future. But Tarzan, Flash Gordon, and Buck Rogers were fictional characters. They saved other fictional characters in pulp magazines and comic strips. They couldn't save anyone in the real world, where millions of people were struggling to find jobs during the Great Depression of the 1930s. They couldn't save Jerry's father, who had died of heart failure during an after-hours robbery in his clothing store in Cleveland. Jeez, that's like a real-life tragedy like Bruce Wayne. Jerry read amazing stories every evening, every week, every chance he got. If he wasn't reading, he was watching. The cinemas had no shortage of rousing motion pictures about daredevils who laughed at danger. And when he should have been paying attention in class, he let his thoughts drift to galaxies yet to be explored. None of it helped him miss his father less, but it did distract him from his sadness for a little while. Jerry also wrote his own adventure and science fiction stories. He'd pound away at his typewriter by the front window in his attic. From there, he could see boys playing ball and flirting with girls on the street below. Jerry wasn't good at those things. He had crushes on girls who didn't know, or didn't care, that he existed. Some of them look like they hope I don't exist, Jerry thought. Jerry was shy, unless he could talk about muscle men or detectives or jetpacks or ray guns or any other champions or gadgets he'd read about. But the kids he knew weren't interested in those weird tales, and they ignored Jerry. Jerry and Joe could have passed for brothers. Both were short, both wore glasses. Like Jerry, Joe was lousy at sports and mousy around girls. He too was shy, almost painfully so. And he too escaped to other worlds in pulps and strips, then made up his own worlds. Oh, here he says, this is Jerry saying, except Joe Shuster. There's one other person at school like him. But he did it with pictures, not words. While Jerry was typing in his attic, Joe was drawing in his kitchen, using a breadboard as a surface. Joe often illustrated Jerry's stories. No matter the obstacle, Joe found a way to draw. When his family couldn't afford art paper, he made do with wrapping paper from the butcher, or the back of discarded wallpaper. In winter, because the Schuster's apartment had no heat, he drew while bundled in several sweaters, one or two coats, even gloves. And here you see he's bundled, he's got his gloves on. It wasn't just kids who didn't understand Jerry and Joe. One of Jerry's teachers told him that he was wasting his time writing what she called trash. But Jerry sensed that these stories were important. In life, people got pushed around. Children lost parents. Criminals got away. In stories, heroes could prevent all of that. And Jerry had a plan. If he and Joe could come up with a colorful new character, they could produce a comic strip about him and maybe sell it to a newspaper syndicate. The partners crafted a science fiction story in cartoons. It starred a brave, tough man who fought for truth and justice. But that wasn't enough to make him stand out from many other men of action already on the newsstands. After only one publisher said no to Jerry and Joe's concept, Joe tore up the pages in disappointment. Jerry managed to save the cover. Late one summer night in 1934, Jerry couldn't sleep. The air sagged from the heat, but that was not why Jerry was still awake. What if I was real oh my goodness. Late one summer night in 1934, Jerry couldn't sleep. The air sagged from the heat, but that was not why Jerry was still awake. What if I was real terrific, Jerry thought. What if I had something special going for me, like jumping over buildings or throwing cars around? Then maybe people would notice me. Jerry knew he would never be able to do anything like that, but suddenly he was struck with the idea of a hero who could. He hopped up to scribble it down. After he flopped back into bed, more vivid details about this hero began flickering in his brain. 2 hours later, he sprang up again, stumbled, and wrote those ideas down. This went on all night. The character would be like Samson, Hercules, and all the strongmen Jerry had ever heard of, rolled into one. Only more so, Jerry thought. But he would not be a man in the jungle, in space, or in the future. Actually, he would not be a man at all. This hero would be an alien. Not a slimy green giant with 200 eyes who prowled a distant moon and snacked on astronauts. Rather, an alien who protected humans. An alien who even looked human. An alien who came from far away and now lived on Earth. The real Earth. The Great Depression Earth. That was something different. The other heroes Jerry and Joe read about were regular humans in strange places. This hero would be a stranger in a regular place. He would have impenetrable skin, phenomenal speed, and tremendous agility. Like, say, a habit of leaping so high that it would look as though he were flying. Joe would like that. The hero would have the confidence to speak to any woman. Joe would really like that. But even heroes need a break. So this one would have a secret identity. Then he would be meek and mild, like Joe and I are, and wear glasses like we do, Jerry thought. No one would guess that such a hero was also someone like them. That's kind of funny because I always have students saying, like, how does nobody know Clark Kent is Superman? He doesn't wear a mask. So these guys felt like, because they both wear glasses, that might have been enough to just blend in. Before dawn, Jerry tugged on his clothes over his pajamas. He dashed out without eating. Jerry didn't run much, but that morning he ran faster than a speeding bullet. 9.5 blocks to Joe's apartment. In breathless spurts, Jerry described to Joe what he'd imagined. When he was done, Jerry pushed his glasses back up his nose. He ripped out a sheet from his notebook and handed it to Joe, who grabbed a pencil. Joe leaned close to the paper, as he usually did. Jerry leaned over Joe's shoulder, as he usually did. Even with his glasses on, Joe squinted. He began to sketch. His vision was blurry, but his art wasn't. In seconds, the hero in Jerry's mind was coming to life on Joe's page. Just as Jerry had written all night, Joe kept drawing all day. His eyes grew tired before his hand, but he was too excited to stop. Jerry had known this hero would be strong, but it was not until he gazed at Joe's designs that he realized how strong. He would be as strong as steel, and because they had created him, Jerry and Joe felt as strong as steel too. Their hero was more than good, even more than great. They studied his costume. Let's put something on the front, Joe said. They decided on an S for super, and for Siegel and Schuster, Jerry said. The boys thought this hero might be their big idea. They prepared a series of comic strips about him and again set out to find a publisher. For more than 3 years, editors turned them down. Finally, one said yes. His company was putting out a new type of magazine called a comic book. He asked Jerry and Joe if they would rearrange their comic strips to fit that format. They happily agreed. One of the owners took one look at Joe's cover drawing and shook his head. Nobody's going to believe this, he said. But Jerry and Joe believed it, just as they believed Tarzan could yak with apes, and Flash Gordon could move to another planet, and Buck Rogers could wake from a coma after 500 years. The Great Depression had lasted nearly a decade. Now a world war was brewing. Every day people were about to be called to duty, and many would prove to be real-life heroes. But if there was ever a time for a fantasy hero, particularly one with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men, it was then. People wanted a hero they knew would always come home. Jerry and Joe gave them that. The world's first superhero. He debuted in 1938. His comic book was an instant hit. Soon, he also won fans in a comic strip. On the radio, in animated shorts, in books, and in movie serials. When television caught on, he got a show there too. He continued to soar up, up, and away. Some people look up in the sky and see a bird or a plane, but nothing beyond. In the trying days of yesteryear, Jerry and Joe looked up and saw a star no one had discovered before. They brought him to Earth and watched him become a superstar. And today, on every story where his name appears, theirs do too. All right, gives a little further background. I'm going to skip that for now, but if you're interested and you want to check that out a little further, Boys of Steel, the creators of Superman. Again, that's by Marc Tyler Nobleman. And I love that the creation of the first superhero. And I always thought what made Superman kind of unique was that his secret identity was like the human. Like Bruce Wayne is a real ordinary person, right? Or he's a multimillionaire with a bunch of gadgets, billionaire, I should say. But he's just a human pretending to be a superhero. Superman is this super alien pretending to be an ordinary human. So I always kind of like the irony of that. Most superheroes are pretending like they don't have, or they're just pretending to be ordinary. Well, no, they are ordinary people that then do extraordinary things. Take Tony Stark, for instance. Whereas Superman, a little different. He's pretending like he doesn't have any powers. I guess the X-Men were kind of like that too. They were always kind of timid about their powers. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed my superhero friends, and keep watching, subscribe, let me know your favorite superhero, or let me know, I don't know. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. That was Boys of Steel, the creators of Superman. Take it easy, be kind to each other, and yeah, be super. Peace out.